It all started with Karen the HOA nightmare always bossing everyone around, especially a 35-year-old man named Jake who had moved into the neighborhood recently. Jake was a quiet guy who liked his routine and peace, but Karen treated him like her. Personal handyman, always showing up unannounced with lists of chores demanding he fix things, mow lawns, clean gutters, and run errands for her. And somehow she thought it was his duty to obey. She would clap her hands and say, "Jake, you need to take care of this right now," and Jake would nod politely because refusing meant confrontation, or worse, a threat to report him to the HOA board or make his life miserable at work. For months, this went on quietly until the neighborhood decided to throw a summer block party complete with music, food, games, and decorations. Karen saw this as her opportunity to assert dominance. She arrived early, setting up tables, chairs, and a buffet, and then she spotted Jake sitting casually by the drinks table. She marched over clipboard in hand and barked, "Jake, I need you to handle the lighting setup and fix the sound system now." Jake looked up calmly. Karen growled, "If you do not start immediately, I will make sure the HOA files a complaint and I will speak to your boss about your dedication. You cannot refuse." He exhaled slowly. "Okay, Karen, I will do it, but just remember, I have other commitments too." Karen waved her hand dismissively. "That is irrelevant. Now move." Jake obeyed under protest, moving toward the electrical boxes and sound equipment while Karen hovered nearby, counting screws and checking extension cords. She micromanaged every step, commenting on how slowly he worked and how incompetent the decorations looked. It was exhausting for Jake, but he stayed calm as he adjusted wires and connected speakers. The tension built as Karen hovered closer. She wanted to make sure he did every little thing according to her standards. The crowd at the party started noticing her bossy attitude, whispers, and rolled eyes spread through the guests. Some tried to avoid Karen altogether, but she seemed oblivious to social cues and continued pushing Jake harder and harder, until finally she insisted he connect a set of outdoor lights near the fountain, which had exposed wiring designed to be low voltage, but certainly capable of giving a sharp jolt if handled carelessly. She stood behind him, arms crossed, muttering critiques and threats about job termination and HOA complaints. Jake carefully began adjusting the connections. Karen impatiently tapped her foot and leaned closer, making comments about how she knew better. She laughed nervously and said, "Just make sure it works quickly." It was then that Jake accidentally brushed against a live connector, causing a small spark that startled both of them. Karen yelped involuntarily and jerked her hand back, hitting the metal frame. Her foot slipped, and she touched the wiring again, receiving a sharp current. The crowd gasped. Some screamed as she collapsed, back into the decorations, shrieking and flailing. The shock was enough to knock her to the ground and short-circuit the lights, creating sparks and smoke. Panic erupted while the partygoers screamed and ran back. Karen was writhing in the grass, holding her arm. Jake jumped back, shocked, unsure if she was hurt badly, but relieved the situation was not worse. In the midst of the chaos, a uniformed police officer who had been attending the party noticed the commotion. He quickly pushed through the crowd and assessed the scene. Karen was still thrashing on the ground, muttering about how she had been attacked and complaining about property damage. The officer calmly instructed everyone to step back and ordered Karen to stop resisting while she tried to argue and scream that Jake had sabotaged her. The officer realized she had accidentally electrocuted herself through the exposed wiring and was now causing a disturbance on a public property. The officer handcuffed her and began explaining her rights, while neighbors watched in shock and awe. The irony of Karen being humbled by her own overconfidence was not lost on anyone. Everyone else at the party, including Jake, tried to help contain the situation and make sure Karen was safe until paramedics and additional officers arrived. Some neighbors whispered congratulations to Jake for staying calm, and others laughed quietly at Karen's downfall. It was a mix of chaos, comedy, and justice, all rolled into one dramatic sequence. The summer block party would be remembered for months, Not for the music, food, or decorations, but for Karen, the HOA bully, finally getting a taste of consequences. The hard way. After Karen was handcuffed by the police officer, the party slowly calmed down. Guests murmured about what had just happened, and some began taking photos and videos discreetly. Jake stepped back, holding a first aid kit he had grabbed earlier to make sure Karen was not seriously injured. The officer instructed everyone to give space, and confirmed paramedics were on the way. Meanwhile, Karen was still shouting indignantly, claiming she was the victim and that Jake had deliberately sabotaged her work. No one really took her seriously now because it was obvious to everyone that her own negligence had caused the incident. The officer calmly told her that her behavior, along with the electrocution incident, was grounds for detainment for reckless endangerment and that she would have to answer to both civil authorities and the HOA for creating a dangerous situation. Karen tried to argue she had authority as HOA president and that the wiring should have been safe. She flailed her hands and shouted that Jake was a menace trying to ruin her reputation. But the officer remained firm. He told her that no amount of HOA titles gave her the right to put someone at risk, and that her refusal to follow safe practices during the party had caused her own injury and endangered others. The crowd watched silently, some whispering about how karma had finally caught up to her. Jake felt a mix of relief and satisfaction that the ordeal was finally over without him getting hurt. He had done exactly what he needed to do and stayed calm while Karen's arrogance led her to disaster. As paramedics arrived, they assessed Karen and ensured she was stable, but it was clear she had learned a painful lesson about overstepping boundaries and unsafe practices. The officer then escorted her to the patrol car while Karen continued to yell and protest her treatment. Neighbors snapped photos and videos of the arrest, and the footage quickly circulated through local community forums, social media, and neighborhood watch groups, becoming a viral sensation titled HOA Karen Shocked at Summer Party. Some guests offered Jake congratulations for keeping his composure while Karen faced the consequences for months of intimidation and overbearing behavior. The incident sparked a neighborhood conversation about HOA power abuse and respect for residents' personal safety. Many people reached out to express relief that Jake had been vindicated and that someone had finally held Karen accountable for her repeated harassment. The HOA board itself faced scrutiny for allowing such behavior to go unchecked, and several members resigned quietly, citing embarrassment and public backlash. Following the party, Karen was suspended from HOA duties pending investigation, and community meetings were called to address proper guidelines. For resident interaction safety protocols and limits of HOA authority, Jake returned to his normal routine, but he was now treated with respect by neighbors who had witnessed his composure and Karen's downfall. He even received invitations to local events as a guest of honor to speak about personal safety in community settings and how to deal with overbearing HOA figures. Meanwhile, Karen had to deal with legal consequences, medical reports, and embarrassment in front of the entire neighborhood. Her attempts to maintain control had completely backfired, and the lesson was clear to everyone. Watching the videos and hearing the retellings, the neighborhood collectively learned that power cannot be abused indefinitely, and that even the most entitled figures can be humbled by their own actions. Jake's careful handling of the situation earned him respect and a kind of local celebrity status that spread through the HOA and beyond. Social media buzzed for weeks with memes and humorous reenactments of Karen flailing and receiving a current in front of the party crowd. It became a running joke at block parties and a teaching moment for residents about boundaries, personal safety, and the dangers of overconfidence. Karen's reign as the tyrannical HOA president effectively ended that night, and she became a cautionary tale in the neighborhood. While some still whispered about her antics, the overall atmosphere shifted toward camaraderie, respect, and vigilance against abuse of power. Jake's measured response demonstrated that patience, intelligence, and calmness often triumph over arrogance and aggression. As for Karen, she was reminded repeatedly that consequences arrive in unexpected ways, and that no title or clipboard can protect someone from the results of careless and dangerous behavior. The summer block party became legendary not for food or games, but for the dramatic lesson in humility and personal responsibility. It was a mixture of chaos, comedy, justice, and satisfaction for the neighborhood, as everyone realized that standing up to overreach and letting natural consequences take place can restore balance and safety. The end of Karen's petty rule was celebrated quietly by many, but recorded and shared widely as a humorous yet serious reminder about respecting boundaries, understanding limits, and avoiding the temptation to force others into unwanted labor. The 35-year-old man who had been her target emerged as calm, clever, and vindicated, a true hero in the eyes of the community and a symbol of resilience and patience in the face of unreasonable demands.